Hey there, everybody. Finally, at the end of our very first week of remote learning and remote communications, you guys are doing great. I just haven't heard from our drummer friend who sits towards the back yet. So if any of you are in contact with him, please give him a call or text or something and see if you can get him to contact me in some way so I can find out if he needs any help. So anyway, I miss all of you and I'm very proud of you. I'm hearing from you in various different ways. Just please make sure that you're filling in the submission forms and getting everything taken care of. Most of you are on board with that, so we're just going to make sure that everybody is doing just fine. And don't forget to listen to the prayer videos that I've been putting up, and if you have anything that you have need of, to please contact me, and if it's a prayer request, I'll pray for it, and if it's something else, then we'll work that out. All right, so let's just jump into the second part of this lesson on binomial radical expressions. The first part was just talking about the radical expressions and multiplying them together and distributing to whatever needed to be distributed to. But this part is going to help us to deal with rationalizing a denominator that happens to have a binomial in it. So the first part in that process is to be able to identify conjugates. And we had talked about conjugates before, and conjugates are just simply when you change the sign in between the two numbers, so that the conjugate of 5 plus square root of 3 is 5 minus the square root of 3. The conjugate of the square root of 2 minus 7 is the square root of 2, that's right, plus 7, plus square root of 7. And then the conjugate here will change this plus into a minus so that you get this. Hopefully you were able to anticipate that. Remember, you're writing down what you need to. I know I don't have the blanks to give you to fill out. However, you're perfectly able to write down whatever it is that you need from this and rewatch as necessary. All right, when we multiply conjugates, one of the advantages to that is that the middles drop out. Wait a minute, what do you mean by the middles drop out? The middles dropping out meaning that when we're multiplying 2 times 2, we get 4. But when I multiply 2 times negative square root of 3, I get 2 square root of negative 3. And then I've got this one becomes positive. So the positive and the negative ones, when we multiply them, these two will drop out because they're just opposites of each other. Then the end one, negative square root of 3 squared. But what we can remember also is that a square root squared cancels out pretty much. Cancels out's not really the right word, but think about it this way. You've got square root of 3 times square root of 3, which would give you the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 just turns back into a 3. So these things do, they cancel out, for lack of a better word. So this really, when you do this problem, you get, it's just the number 1. So it's a very, very elaborate way of writing the number 1, but the conjugates have that purpose, and that's going to be useful to us later. Now, do be careful though. Make sure it's actually conjugates multiplying together. Sometimes after this lesson, people start to not be careful and just say, oh, I see a positive and negative, and drop out this part. But please make sure that these numbers are the same. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So you just need to make sure you're watching out for a full conjugate for the front and the end to work out like that. So here, our shortcut would be to already begin to recognize that it doesn't even really matter what these are, because the conjugates in the middle are going to drop out. So you're mostly concerned with the square root of 25 And then what you get when you multiply 3 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. So here's our square root of 5 squared. Here's our middle terms that are going to drop out anyway, so we really don't even care about them. And then here's our end term, 3 times 3 is 9, square root of 2 squared, which is going to give us a 2. So this one becomes a 5. This becomes 9 times 2, which is 18. These two disappeared, and we end up with negative 13. So what I would suggest for this next one is let's try thinking about this one without even writing in these middles. Because if we can do it without writing in the middles, then it just saves us some time. So for example, this one would go ahead and turn into 5 minus 11. And the answer would be 6. You can begin to do these in your head when you get good at them. Here's what it looks like. Square root of 5 squared minus square root of 11 squared equals 5 minus 11, which equals negative 6. Now for now, because you're just getting the hang of it, I would recommend actually writing in these steps so you don't lose track of anything. But remember, the idea is that very, very shortly down the road here, the whole point to doing conjugates is so that you don't have to put all this stuff in, and you can do maybe even a quick jump to 5 minus 11, which gives you negative 6, and 5 minus 9 times 2, which gives you negative 13, and use it as a shortcut. So multiplying a radical binomial times its conjugate is a super nice, easy thing to do. So of course we don't just leave it there. We have to have something to do with it, a purpose for it, what it's used for. So let's take a look. Our purpose for this is going to be to rationalize a denominator when it's a binomial. We already looked at rationalizing the denominator when it was a monomial, where you were just multiplying it times itself, but right now we need to look at rationalizing this denominator as a binomial. So our thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to ask ourselves what the conjugate of the denominator would be. So the first thing you do is you identify the denominator, and you are mentally or even physically writing down what the conjugate is. And then remember, we can always multiply by 1 and get the same answer. So we're not changing a value in this original thing, we're just simplifying it. We're making it look a little bit different so that we get those radicals out of the denominator. So we're going to actually multiply by square root of 5 plus square root of 2 over square root of 5 plus square root of 2. Because this is going to serve the purpose of making us get a whole number in the denominator and doing what we call rationalizing that denominator. So our numerator you still need to distribute. You still need to take 3 square root of 2 times square root 5 and 3 square root 2 times square root 2. But our denominator, we can really simplify this quickly by just saying that, well, wait, this is square root 5 squared minus square root 2 squared, which ultimately turns into 5 minus 2, which is pretty neat because that's super easy. Our numerator, simplify a little bit, square root of 2 squared is really just a 2. And if you're having trouble thinking about that, you can say, okay, wait, square root 2 times square root 2 is square root 4, which gives me 2. All right, here's my number. Then you need to simplify. So as you simplify, we get 6 here and we get 3 here. But keep in mind that this is really like two fractions. For example, if you're going the other direction with it, way back in adding just any kind of fractions, if you had something like, let's go to here, if we had something like 2/5 and we wanted to add it to 1/5, that would be the same as 2 plus 1/5. So you can kind of think of it in the reverse way too, where this could be broken down into a couple of individual pieces. So this, since it equals this, can also go backwards, and that's what's happening here. You're taking 3 square root of 10/3 plus 6/3. And the reason we do that is in an effort to be able to simplify, because 3 divided by 3 cancels out and you just get square root 10. And 6/3 just cancels out and you just get a 2. So that should be very, very, very helpful to you. Let's look at this one. If we want to rationalize the denominator, think about it for a minute. Give it a try on your own. See how far you get. You need to find the conjugate of the denominator. The conjugate of the denominator being 3 plus the square root 6. So we're going to multiply numerator and denominator by that. I have this in parentheses so that when we multiply, we don't forget to distribute this numerator. We don't forget that we're really multiplying 3 times 3 and negative square root 6 times negative times positive square root 6. So distributing here, you get 12x plus 4x square root 6 and 9 minus square root 6 squared. Once again, that nice little shortcut because these two match but are opposite. Denominator becomes 9 minus 6. This can't simplify here. And we end up with this answer. Now, quite honestly, because both of these are not divisible by 3, if you wanted to, you could just stop right here and this answer would be fantastic. But what we will need to do, what else we could do is we could break these fractions up if we wanted to. Turn that one into 12x over 3 and that one over to 4x square root 6 over 3. The 12 and the 3 will cancel and give us 4x, but the other one, there's really nothing that can cancel. Watch out, sometimes people try to cancel these, but remember the square root of 6 is not the same as 6, so you can't just divide these things out, so just be a little bit careful with that. So that's your final answer. Today's lesson, pretty short, so that'll give you some time to work on the assignment, get that out of your road. The remainder of the time you would have spent in class today, just do that, and then make sure you get some good rest this weekend. I know that it really is weird and hard to be at home doing stuff, so try to get, if you can, and you have an area where you can get out and breathe the fresh air and do something besides just sitting in your house, that's probably very good for you. Just make sure you're keeping your good, safe distance, and be safe, be healthy. God bless you, and I can't wait until this is over and we can all just see each other once again.